Ordinary Council meeting of the 24th of June 2021. I would ask Jane, would you be prepared to do the opening Karakia?
Grace. Akataka tiho ki te uru. Akataka tiho ki te tonga. Kia ngā kinukina ki uta. Kia ngā tauta ki tai. Ihi ake ana te atukara. I tiu, i huka, i ho hu. Ki hai mori oa. Seize the winds from the west, seize the winds from the south. Let the breeze blow over the land. Let the breeze blow over the ocean. Let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened ear, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. Behold, it is the breath of life.
Amen. Very good. Move to item 2 on the agenda, which is the apologies. And I don't believe we have any. Great to see. No, she's here. She just
Councillor Martin.
yeah.
He'll be here.
Okay, so someone like to move that the apology for lateness for Councillor Martin until 2 o'clock. And Ginny's actually on site, isn't she? Yeah. Okay, so apology for lateness for Councillor Martin for between 1 and 2. Someone like to move that? So, okay. Councillor Neal, thank you. All those in favour? Brilliant. Declaration of interest, the register is here. Step round. If there's anything that's changed since the last meeting, or if you feel there's something on the agenda that you should declare, please do. Not safer to do it, not to do it. Move to urgent items not on the agenda. Now there is one item that staff have asked to be placed on. I'll ask Tiara to speak to that.
Yes, Your Worship, the item that we've asked just been brought forward is for the.
Could you come out to?
Yeah. It's for the Development Economic Stimulus Fund. Council in terms of Economic Development Committee report went out for applications of interest. We have received 3 of those applications, and due to the content of the application and the timeline for processing according to the development of the West Coast, we just like to consider those and complement part of the agenda to make a recommendation as to what goes forward for consideration by the West Coast.
Is the reason why the discussion can't be delayed?
In terms of meeting the end of the financial year for Development West Coast, tidying up the fund as well.
Okay. Councillors, any questions on them? Someone like to move that the urgent item, District Economic Stimulus Fund application, be heard in the public excluded section of today's meeting to protect the information when making the information available will be likely and reasonably to prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied or is the subject of the information. And that's the Goima 1987 section 7.2b. Like to move? Thank you, Councillor Kennedy, and a second, Councillor Hart. Those in favour?
Aye.
The matter's been added to the agenda. Thank you for that. Move to the minutes of the previous meetings. It's item 5 on the agenda. So we'll move to the Ordinary Council meeting minutes of the 27th of May 2021. These minutes have been circulated. There have been no requests for changes. Are there any requests? Someone like to move that the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting held on the 27th of May 2021 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. Councillor Hart, thank you. Councillor Coe, all those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Move to the Extraordinary Council meeting minutes of the 15th of June 2021. Again, they've been circulated. No request for changes, but Is there any discussion on that? I'd like to move that the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on the 15th of June 2021 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. Councillor Kennedy, thank you. Second. Councillor Hart, those in favour? Approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed ordinary council meeting minutes of the 27th of May 2021 and the extraordinary council meeting minutes of the 15th of June 2021. Move on to item 6 of the agenda, which is on pages 7 to 9 of your agenda.
Sorry, Your Worship. Did we have another urgent item added to the agenda for the WHL?
No.
We don't need to do that. Thank you.
Which is the action list, which is on pages 7 to 9 of your agenda. And the Chief Executive will proceed.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, councillors. We'll just take you through one by one. The action list is read in the report. Hokitika Wastewater Treatment Plant, the target here was to set up a Hokitika Wastewater Treatment Plant Project Oversight Committee, which was completed last month. In terms of the monthly update, I'll take that as a request to make this a standing item in future reports. But I suggest we raise that to a standing item for all significant projects within council books. Put that as a standing item in future works for reporting. Second point, speed limit review. This is on hold. Waiting for the NZTA speed review, which is underway at the moment. Ross Chinese Gardens flooding issues. A number of activities in this space, and I'd like to thank Councillor Cogan for taking the lead with directly involving herself with the community and Renus in terms of making forward progress in this project. In terms of the lake level management, we have had an on-site meeting with DOC, community and our own resources to look at that project. Engineering design will be completed, then an application for the resource consent will be submitted shortly through the Regional Council for approval. There will be a time lag in terms of getting that rectified, but we would like to have it completed before summer. In terms of asking Mark Davies or Doc to talk to future council meetings, previously we've usually waited for them to reach out when they have topics of discussion to be talked about. He has declined this meeting as well, unfortunately. I can reach out again for them to attend the July meeting, if that's what council desires, or wait for them to ask us to come and talk to us. Workshop with Western Holding in Development West Coast. This is to do with the housing strategy. I understand that they're undergoing a strategy review at the moment, and we'll ask Western Holdings to report back to council in due course on the outcome of that through normal process. Kamara Gardens, recent feedback from the community there. They went out for requests for pricing from 2 contractors. Unfortunately, they failed to submit pricing in time. I have a meeting with Kamara representatives in a couple of weeks' time to confirm next steps. Bowel screening program. This is to invite the previous president back at a future statement of the council. Road naming policy. We have one underway in the draft. We are waiting, obviously, Iwi involvement to complete that process of work and present that either in July or August council meeting. LTP submission action point. This is regarding the rates remission and passengers possession. There's a request here to contact submitters post the LTP adoption. Hopefully we'll be adopting that LTP next week. And the final point, LTP submission action point, rates increase in Glacier Country. This has been completed in terms of doing the differential work. There's no significant benefit either way, up or down, regarding the rating model. Happy to take questions, Your Worship.
Thank you. We'll go around the table.
Oh, sorry, you were Simon. I think you started on the second page of your report, just the canary.
Sorry.
The second page.
I'll finish that off, thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Canary School students, so there's been a bit of activity since the last council meeting. The design scope for the footpath and the intersection has been passed on to West Roads for pricing, so that's progressing. We'll look to appoint that as soon as we have that pricing provided. We have revisited the crossing location, and we have proposed to move the crossing straight across from the Canary Reserve. One point to work with the business across the road, which is the Empire Tavern, to confirm if they're happy with that location, and then we'll proceed with getting that implemented. Fox Landfill, that has been completed with the final execution of the contract to Roscoe's at the last Corporations Tenders Committee. So that is completed. That works is going to be starting shortly. And the last point, iwi representation around council table. Just to point out, like I said last time, with the local government review underway and an expectation that something will be tabled in September with government, this may be addressed as part of that process, but we can obviously put submissions into any outcomes of their review to include it. We'll see how that pans out. Any questions?
Thanks, Simon. Councillor Davidson.
No questions, thanks.
Councillor Coburn, maybe you could update us on, you've been getting involved with the Kamara
Yes.
and Ross Chinese Gardens. Could you update us at the same time?
Yep, sure. So at this point, as Simon's outlaid with Kamara, the hold up all the way along has been awaiting the tenders to come in from, from two particular contractors in Greymouth. They were given 2 weeks to be able to put forward, a price. Obviously, they're too busy to do that. So the next process now, and that's where the Kamara people have offered us for assistance from council. They are looking at doing a tender process to go out, a more open tender to everybody and anybody for some of that initial work. And it's not until they can get a costing around that particular works, which seems to be the bigger part of the planned work at the Kamara Gardens, that then they can, after that, sort of engage in sitting down and doing more of a scope of work of what the longer term of the rest of the work will require and the funding that will be required for that. So, yeah, I mean, at least now we're clear on the previous initial third contractors not wanting to go ahead. With the Ross Gardens, at the moment, there's been some really good progress. I get regular photos coming through from Biddy and her team down there doing some great work with the stone paths and whatnot. And I'll be meeting again with the Ross Renus group again tomorrow to just because when we met a month ago, the idea was that they would have a month to get back to us with a scope of work around what is still left to be done, who will be doing it, what those timelines will look like and what those costings will be. And that will, after tomorrow, give us a more fairer indication of exactly where we're going to be at with having them completed. I would like to suggest that we're banded with the idea of February next year to align that with Chinese New Year. But I mean, at this stage, that's a goal. So that's where we're at with both of them. And just while I'm quickly in amongst all of this, I just want to give a plug, please. Councillor Martin and myself have been doing some work recently with engaging with the Runangas and West Reap around to promote Wanga Matariki exhibition. It's what we're working on, the project we've been working on is getting out to all of the local schools to do their interpretation of what they think Matariki is in the form of artwork, film, sculpture. And yeah, thankfully all of the schools have been very engaged in wanting to participate. So next Friday night at 5 o'clock, for any of you out there anywhere that would like to come along to the Pakiwatara building across the road, we're going to have an opening, and there'll be a bit of finger food and some juice there. And to open the exhibition, it will run for 2 weeks. And in the second week of that 2 week, we've planned to have workshops running every day from 10 o'clock till 2 o'clock. Just learning how to do, flax weaving, Matariki stars and flaxes, learning more about the Matariki and how that all works. And also, you'll have a chance to do, some, maybe a little bit of carving, polishing. So that will run from Monday to Friday in the second week of that happening. But also, taking you back to next Friday night at the completion of the opening over here, we're going to ask and invite people to come down to the Regent Theatre, where Richard Wallace, my understanding, is going to now do a presentation and give them more of a detail around what the Matariki stars are and their meanings. And followed by that, we've got the local Kapahaka group are going to do a performance and do a few waiata pieces. Yeah.
Well done.
Yep. So, sorry, that was a bit long-winded, but I just needed to get a plug in to, support our local kids, to be honest, that are getting on board with the whole Matariki Festival celebrations. Yep.
Councillor Neal.
So questions that give you the invitation you got? Exciting.
Francois.
I'm all good, thank you.
Councillor Hartshorn.
I'm fine, thank you.
Councillor Hart.
I think Simon for the
Councillor Kendi.
No, thanks, Simon. Do we need to remove the Fox landfill from the action list, or perhaps, which is good?
Thank you, George. A couple of things. The Department of Conservation meeting. I think it's a shame, really, that Mark's not taken up that opportunity to come and talk to the council. As the Runung, we have a strong relationship with DOC, and we have regular meetings with them, so it does keep us up to date. I think the department does have, as you point out, has been to the council before when there are issues that crop up of their concern, but it's a two-way street, and I think that the department should have a regular meeting and interaction with the council. And I'll talk to Mark about that just from our perspective.
If councils agree, I could write a list of subject matters that you would request updates on from the department, if that's the way forward, and invite them officially for either July or August meeting.
Yes, I mean, given that almost 90% of Western District is in their control, I really think that there needs to be a two-way communication going on here. So that was that one. Pleased to hear that the Canary Crossing has been moved sensibly to a more central location, which is just a shame that it took so long. This was exactly what Councillor Davidson and myself were asking for months ago. However, it's done, and so that's grand, and so thank you for that. The Puanga Matariki Festival.
Before you move on, just one further point on the location. Because of the location, there is a reduction in parking on the street itself. So I think this will obviously help with the business case to improve the reserve parking area and actually get that sealed Cuban channels at the same time. So that's a further scope of work yet to be quantified yet, but I think that'll be an outcome of this as well.
Great. And that ceiling will extend around the interpretation shelters. Yeah.
And parking not in there as well.
Yes. That'll be a good outcome. So thank you for that. But also you mentioned about the follow-ups from the LTP submission process, contacting the submitters on the adverse possession. Are we going to talk about the concern about the lack of notification for the submitters?
So we must. The challenge in terms of timing for the LTP and meeting audit requirements put us in a very constrained program of timing. So definitely already taken that on board in terms of that process, and we'll review that internally to improve on that going forward. So it's definitely high on the agenda when we do an LTP review in terms of what we can do better, and acknowledge that we have failed for some of the applicants.
Yes, thank you. I think that's important to acknowledge that
We've
it was a failure. Not perfect, and the council staff try their best to fit within those constraints, but at the end of the day, this is the opportunity, as Councillor Cogan has taken up this one, and I agree with her. This is the one opportunity that the ratepayers have to interact with the council, to have their say, so we do need to get it right. So, yeah, thank you.
Just in relation to that, Simon, in relation to the problems around the submissions, it seems to me that phoning in and expecting to talk to council through the phone is just a hopelessly flawed and inadequate way of doing it. So one of the submitters phoned in, we couldn't hear him, and he has perhaps legitimately complained about the process, but going forward, are we going to continue permitting submitters to simply ring up and talk to the whole council basically through a phone? It seems to be a completely inadequate method of.
Yeah, I understand. So, and I think this alludes to all types of submissions on anything that we roll out, including bylaws and annual plans, etc. We'll once again review that internally as the best mechanism for communicating. Ideally, we'd like to be able to see the individual as well, and Zoom may be another option, or some other form of communication.
We don't have a phone system.
Yes, we can. We can upgrade in terms of the type of. We could have our on-speaker system that would enable.
Thank you. Councillor Neal.
So I may just comment on that also. Certainly one of the ones that phoned in was quite clear, so obviously can be done. It's vital that we have distance communications because we're so spread out. But the other thing was, I have heard that some of those that missed out, pretty much through no fault of their own, are expecting to still speak to us. Is that going to happen? Are they given that opportunity? One of them was talking to me a couple of days ago.
Not that I'm aware of. So there's the ones that were on the schedule to speak, because we contacted them prior, were locked in, but the ones, I'm not aware of anyone who wasn't able to talk, that wasn't.
I'll clarify with the person I was speaking to, and maybe you do bring you if that is her expectation.
There won't be a period between now and adoption for it to happen, because the LTP is getting audited now for final adoption. If there's a significant change, we won't be able to have a deadline. I'm not sure what the submission's about.
I think it's just important to be that it's clarified with this person whether or not she is going to be able to speak. It's not, if she's not, that's fine, but that does need to be clarified. So
Okay,
I'll get that out. Thank you.
And Councillor Neal, has she made a written submission as well?
Yeah.
So I just want to speak to that. Okay, that's good. Okay, someone like to move that the updated action list be received with the removal of the Fox Glacier. Thank you. Councillor Davidson. Those in favour? Move on to item 7, which is presentations of the Karana. Item 8 is reports. The first report is from Western Holdings Limited with a statement of intent, 1st of July 2021, and it's on pages 10 to 32 of your agenda. And welcome, Joanne.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, councillors. So we do actually have Chris Gawley zooming in. He's elsewhere today, and apologies from Chris Ray, who's out of town. So we have the statement of intent and the covering report available for you to read, and I just really wanted to highlight section 3.4. So there are some changes from the draft SOI that you saw a few months ago. The first change is following a request from Audit New Zealand for Westland Holdings to put a little bit more numeric challenge around or as a performance measure. So they've asked us to put that in there. It took a few months toing and froing to get exactly what it was they want, and they have agreed to the wording that's included in this current version of the SOI. The second change is around the budget and forecasts that are on page 12 of the actual SOI, and they've addressed some changes that have occurred, particularly with Westroads. So over the last few months, and I'm sure we mentioned it to you before, Westroads are experiencing some downturn in their business. So turnover has been affected by increasing competition, less work out there available to price, and some of their major contracts that they've been working on coming to an end. So there's a number of things that are affecting the turnover, and being conservative, they have pushed that out in the forecast for the year for the 22-23 and 23-24 years as well. So those figures have changed, and I've detailed how that looks. You know, we get the information in from the board of Westroads. They're all over the business. You know, Western Holdings haven't challenged them on those. You know, that's what they believe is the most likely outcomes, and of course that gets amalgamated into the whole business to produce these budgets. So really just wondered if there's any questions.
Thanks, Jane. Well, this is the first year that it's gone through a process where we've actually had the opportunity to have some input, which we had a couple of meetings ago, and this is the document. Deputy Mayor Crothers, any comments?
Joanne, in 3.4, say that there was some change required by Audit New Zealand.
Yes.
To the wording. Which particular sub-paragraph are you talking about there?
So sorry, let me just bear with me. It's under our performance measures, and so that's on, I think, your page
3.1 is that?
Yeah. So it's detailed in the covering report. It's on 3.4 in the actual SOI.
Page 7.
Page 7. So it's their financial performance targets. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find them here. Electronic scraping works, isn't it? So yeah, items in the performance measures, which are on your page 20, it's items 7, 8, and 9, and 10. So they wanted some more numeric measures in there around the financials, and that's what was asked for by Audit New Zealand. And we have come up with these figures, and that's Audit New Zealand quite happy.
What's the point of that? Are they just being pedantic?
Probably. Because the figures are in the budget, you know, in my opinion, figures are in the budget, and that is the budget is a performance measure in itself. So it's kind of just twisting things around into a different way of looking at it.
Paul.
Yeah, thank you. I don't really have much to comment on that apart from the concern over Westroads, which we all share, facing a bumpy road.
I understand management are addressing it as best they can.
Councillor Kennedy.
No, I suppose we've been through that, yeah, and like Paul says, West Roads, and yeah, I'm concerned about the not contract and them losing it. And I suppose you need to know whether they've got a plan if that happens.
Yes, so
because it's a
just for your reference, Western Holdings is meeting with the full board of West Roads tomorrow to see where things going.
yeah. I don't know everything, obviously, but I've heard it's possible.
No thanks, Stuart. Yeah, obviously, as previous councillor said, we've already thrashed this out, but I think it's good that they've asked you to include some key KPIs just as a snapshot, because it's good to have those in there as a measure. So I think that's good option from audit.
Councillor Hartsham.
Yeah, no, just same as Councillor Kennedy and others, just a bit of a concern about West Roads, but yeah, that's contracting, I suppose, and ups and downs, but it would be a major concern, I would think, if they did lose a roading contract, but that's all.
Francois.
No, everyone said everything, so no, happy.
Councillor Neil.
Yeah, good to see the timeliness of it, so thank you for that.
Councillor Karakia.
No, actually, Joe, I congratulate you guys because, you know, I can see there's been considerable time and thought put into this for that next 3 years. And I'm like Councillor Hart, it was good to see some tighter KPIs around expectation also addressed in that to ensure that that performance, you know, has a high expectation level that needs to be constantly achieved. Yeah.
Councillor Davidson.
Thanks, Joanne. I just on item 15, that's a financial forecast on page 12, I think it is. What's the percentage contributed by West Roads, and what's the percentage contributed by Destination Westland on that?
Yep, so I can't give you the exact numbers.
Oh, just roughly, sorry.
Roughly, most of it comes from West Roads.
Okay.
So if you just recall discussions we've had previously about Destination Westland, their performance is improving, and we'll discuss that with you next next item. But their remit is to make a profit to spend on social outcomes. So they're never going to show a significant profit that returns a dividend to the shareholder, because that's spent on things that benefit the community to some extent, you know, the housing and various bits and pieces.
Yeah. Okay. And the dividend this year is nil.
Mm-hmm.
And are these figures, you say they're changing a bit?
No, that incorporates the changes. So when you speak about this year, it won't impact the cash until next year.
Yeah.
So there will be a dividend paid potentially. They'll have to call the dividend for this current year that's paid post 1 July.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
that dividend is sort of based on the improvement of machinery or what?
Look, at the moment there's no intention to put significant money into that capital expenses. Yeah. So for obvious reasons. So that's a bit of a change on where we were last year, and that will come through. It'll come through with the dividend and a report once the year end is reached. But there's no intention to invest significant money in further capital.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joanne. I invite Councillor to move that Council receive the report, and B, that Council approve the Westland Holdings Statement of Intent for the 3 years commencing 1st of July 2021 and approve it for public release. Councillor Hart, thank you. Councillor Neil, those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Joanne's as well, the longer term structure review. It's on pages 33 to 37 of your agenda. Thanks, Joanne.
So in this instance, I'm actually going to refer to this one to Chris Scory. So Chris, if you'd like to speak to it, please.
Yeah, no problems. Hello, everybody. How are we all doing? Look, this paper we have presented already with a few minor changes, so really just open to understand any further questions or comments that you have rather than running through it all again. So I'll just open the floor for comment and questions for me and Joe.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, the suggestion which has come from the board that we adopt recommendation 4.6, that's the transitional board. Chris, in your view, is the present arrangement, shadow board arrangement, not working? If it's not working, why is it not working? Because the alternative for 4.6, of course, as you know, going to involve an additional expenditure of 56,000 in an environment when that's going to be reasonably hard to find. So can you summarise for us why the present arrangement, the shadow board arrangement, is not, in the board's view, working?
Probably two comments I'll make around the first one being that it's not working, but it doesn't generate us the pure independent board that we have, such as West Road. So it does leave Destination Western kind of rattled into Western Holdings, but I wouldn't say it's not working. We made some significant progress as we needed to through the I guess what we call the rebalance. So I think it is working, but the second point I'd make is the first one's independence. The second one is probably around the time and commitment from the Western Holdings directors in regards to running two boards. Effectively, we are running that second board without any remuneration. So there is two things to consider in there. We are spending quite a bit of time building the strategy, running monthly board meetings, all that sort of stuff. So firstly, I don't think it gives us that pure intent of Western Holdings where we have a hand between the two CCOs. And the second point being that I don't think it's sustainable to ask the directors to continue to run that organisation for free, if that makes sense. So, and Joe, if you have anything to add, please do.
Look, we have, Western Holdings has looked at this long and hard to try and establish what would be the best outcome. Destination Westland has improved its position since this time last year, where we did reset it all, and things were looking quite grim at that time. They're looking much more positive, but in order to really drive that organisation, we need to be working towards an independent board.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Well, I'm afraid I disagree. I think it's time for the council and as the ultimate shareholder to keep its feet on the ground. My suggestion would be 4.3, which is amalgamation of the Destination Westland into Western Holdings. When you break it down, the Destination Westland is essentially the airport, and a small town swimming pool, and a heliport that's not doing much at the moment. It probably won't be for quite some time. And I don't think there's any justification that I can see that warrants a whole new board reinstated. I understand that it's been an extra workload on the board of Western Holdings, and I think there'd certainly be some argument for an extra remuneration for the directors for the work on that, but it's another way to do it rather than creating this whole other structure. As I say, it's Hokitika Airport. It's not Heathrow. Hokitika is not Hong Kong. It's a small town. It's a small district. Ultimately, this company is owned by the ratepayers, and this district has been thumped by COVID worse than anywhere else in New Zealand. And now we're facing with a fairly rough sort of a rate increase, and I just don't think that it can be justified.
Yeah, I suppose we've thrashed it out a fair bit, and I'm I've got to say I'm still unsure about which is the best way. And Paul, you do make some good points, and I appreciate the fact that you're not being remunerated for the time and effort you put in, and yeah, I'm not too sure about which is the best way forward currently.
Councillor Hart.
Yeah, like previous councillors said, we have thrashed this out, but I actually agree with an independent board because they're very separate in nature, and personally I understand the time commitment for running two boards, and to keep it independent we need to have a separate board, so I support the recommendations in this report.
Councillor Archer.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one. As two previous councillors said, we're in one of the hardest times we've ever been in, and it's not going to come out of it very easily in the short term. I'm pretty hard to make a decision at this stage. I suppose we'll just see what the rest of the councillors decide and go from there.
Francois.
I think I was clear right at the start of this that I'm not a fan of it, so I'm more aligned with Paul's thinking. I just don't see the size to justify another separate board. I'd be obviously the workload would increase with if it stayed where it is currently. So therefore, there might be a need to look at the remuneration package possibly, but I just don't see the need for another board that the ratepayers got to fund. Sorry.
Yeah, I prefer 4.2 or 4.3, and with added remuneration of directors if we do stick with that. I don't think we need the extra layers. Most boards don't have another one above them that way, certainly not one that size. I was surprised at the cost of amalgamating, where only 20 to 30,000. I was expecting it to be more than that, so go with 4.2 or 4.3.
Councillor Karakia.
Yeah, it made some really interesting reading. I think the problem is in this current climate, it's really difficult to be able to talk about adding extra boards to any of our CCO's operations. Whilst I acknowledge, the extra work that I know you guys do put into it, and I think that I agree that needs to be another discussion. You guys should not be expected to do the work of two boards and only be paid for one. I would have quite liked to have seen another option there around retaining the current board, managing both. But what I did wonder is whether, because I was interested in where you talked about the ability to attract quality directors that could come on a transitional basis. So whether that could be that, the board went to 4 instead of 3, and you could, but then with the consideration of remuneration, because I also am aware that moving forward as well for Destination Western, we're going to be transferring over the pensioner housing and stuff. There is going to be a lot to be working on. So I wouldn't expect that to be just for us to continue and expect growth without there being some financial necessity, to compensate for the current board. But yeah, to change it to a whole new board of transition to a whole new 3 just makes me nervous at the moment.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I think you've outlined the necessity for directors there. There looks to be enough work there, particularly with this new housing coming on. So, in fact, I support your recommendation.
Thank you. I think one of the things that we need to be aware of is that the directors have a different liability to operations than we do as councillors. The directors of these companies, in relation to the Frank and Sallyport operation and the Hokitika Airport Limited, are in the highest risk for liability of any of our operations. It's unacceptable that they've been working for 12 months and not been paid. Completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
I support their recommendation because there's a reality, and that is that the destination Westland and the airport will never be merged into Westland Holdings for a number of reasons. But the principal reason is the risk. You don't want an aviation result that ends up exceeding the amount that's insured for and collapsing the group. So it's about risk management, and so I'm very much in favour of the recommendation as well. Can you go around again, or would someone like to test the water on the?
Your Worship, can I just add something more? Just to clarify that the intention is that this transition would happen over as long a period as up to 3 years. Because we're not putting the organisation at risk, so we don't want to just walk away and put your people in and have that risk, the good outcomes that we've achieved to date. So we try and get a person, if this is agreed, we try and get a person fairly quickly within the first few months and take one of us out. The main criteria on that would be appointing someone local, and by local I mean West Coast wide. If we can, and we wouldn't use a recruitment agency if they would put the costs on there, we think that's excessive, and we try and do that internally. And then as we sort of rebalance and we think that they've got the hang of it, things are running along smoothly, we do a second person. So the idea is to try to spread that out as long as necessary, so that we don't put additional risk on the organisation.
Your Worship, seems to me we're pretty split on this. And I wonder whether that's a good environment to make any sort of decision on. Is there any possibility we can simply defer this for further consideration? I just sort of wonder whether it's a good idea to make these decisions at the moment. I know that brings certainty one way or the other, I understand that. For that. But this is an important issue. It is important.
I would like to get a result today, Your Worship. We have a board that's currently still covering two boards. How long do we postpone it for and have the same outcome? Do we keep deferring? So, my opinion. In terms of council's opinion around how long they would like to reconsider this, or is there any further information councillors need to make a decision?
I suppose if we talk about option 4.3 and the amalgamation of the board, right? The board would obviously have your employment conditions would change, and have to. And you might say, oh no, I don't want the job anymore, or
it needs to be
yeah. And then we've got to talk about, well, how much more is that worth? I don't have any answers to these questions. I'm just kind of putting them out there.
I can kind of answer that and say that it would be easy to get that sized and priced. That's not the biggest challenge. Yeah. The biggest challenge is around the risk with the airport. So if you amalgamate Westland Holdings, you probably have to amalgamate it into Destination Westland, because Destination Westland's got CAA approval for the company, so you can't close that company down. Or you create all sorts of challenges around CAA. So you have to somehow restructure the whole board. And the risk is, if, as the Mayor mentioned, if there's a major catastrophe in one of the airports and the damages exceed the insurance, you potentially lose Westroads as well.
So, but is there any risk carrying on like we are currently, and pay you more, let's say, and when you have your Destination Westland, your Western Holdings meeting, you're there at the same time and have your,
which is what we do.
yeah, which is what you're currently doing, and being paid more as opposed to a full amalgamation.
Yeah, look, we could potentially look at that. The only trouble is it doesn't create full independence. So who smacks Westland, Destination Westland on the hand for not having their governance processes in place? You know, that the idea with the holdings is that you oversee the two companies and make sure they're performing to their best ability. You've got their governance in place, they're complying with legislation, all those sorts of things. You lose a little bit of that.
But doesn't that give us the council a more direct line anyway?
Yeah, the only, I guess, in some respects, we have had our eyes totally on Destination Westland for a year and maybe have taken them off Westroads a little bit because of time and because of, you know, the issues that are right in front of your face. You know, I don't think that's well, now we've got to turn our eyes back to Westroads because there's issues there. So,
Your worship, this is an impossible way forward. If potentially the transition process didn't start until the second half of next financial year, that obviously reduced the cost quite considerably.
Well, I'm not sure that we three would be prepared to carry on for another 6 months without any remuneration. I don't think it's reasonable to ask for that. We offered to do it. We were happy to do it when there was a crisis. At this time last year, we you know, that's just what you take on. We are no longer in a crisis. And
so
I don't think it's
just a point of clarification, 4.2, you said no cost, but that's actually not actually the reality, is it? If you consider staying in that role, there will be an increased remuneration.
Yeah.
Which basically almost dovetails in a 4.6 being the same type of cost.
That would be reasonable.
I think just if I may say something through your worship, one thing to think about also is that we would like to accelerate one of the directors to be freed up from Destination Westland more, given the challenge we're facing with Westroads. So at least one of the directors has actually got their full eyes on Westroads in the next period. So we were quite keen to move forward with our 4.6 so we could release one of us actually, and they could really spend more time concentrating and supporting on Westroads, which I think do have some headwinds to face into. So I just thought I'd add that for your thought process as well.
You know, in view of the direction going forward with Destination Westland, expecting the Holdings Board to handle the transfer of pension housing, our KPIs require an additional 10 retirement units per year. Someone's got to design it, someone's got to, you know, they've got, the workload is crazy in many ways. So I think the very least we've got to do is give them an additional director in some form of transition to allow independence. Because the merging, we've been down this track for 10 years. There are tax reasons why you can't do it, but there are risk reasons why you can't do it. And they're principally about the risk of aviation. You know, it's out there, and you know, I can recall well the deer running along the runway beside the plane. There are things that happen.
So, just another question, Joe. So how would that look if we were to suggest bringing on another director that could be transitioned into that role?
Yeah, look, we could, but that means there's 4 directors, so that, you know, it puts the fees up. I think.
But in the short term it would, but the reality is you still need to be able to get somebody in and they need to become familiarised. That's going to take them 6 months. To be fair anyhow, isn't it?
Yeah.
To get their head around what that is, and I don't, the risk to me would be dropping off one of the three of you with the experience you've now, because you've all been working very closely together, to lose that experience as you bring somebody on newer to become familiar. But what I do fully support, and I totally agree, there should be no expectation around you having to do any continued work. I'm well aware we had a conversation 12 months ago, and you guys very kindly at the time were willing to actually give a lot of your free time. I don't think that as a council we should expect that any longer. And we need to, I know that we're currently in a very, COVID world at the moment, but it's still, that doesn't mean that it's at the expense of people having to work well beyond for remuneration. So
we could certainly put a transition in place for a year and then come back to you next year and see how it's looking, including another person or not, whatever you feel is going to work best.
We have a recommendation on the table, and I think we need to go forward. And the only way we can go forward is to test the table locally. So I think it's clear that there are differing opinions, but we have a responsibility to make a decision. I'd like to move that council receives the report, and B, the council supports option 4.6 to establish a transitional independent board for Destination Western at the cost of $56,000, noting that this is a 3-year transition, and noting the comments made by both Chris and Joanne in relation to remuneration. Someone like to second that? Councillor Hart, thank you. There's a motion there. I'll put the motion if you raise your hand if you support the motion, and we'll go from there. So we have 3, 4, 5, motion's carried. 6, motion's carried. Is there anyone that wishes to record their vote against the Councillor Neal and Councillor Kennedy? Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. You wish, well, I don't get a vote. That's clarified, but I just want to say, in my view, it's unnecessary, too small, and
All there to say. Thank you very much, Joanne.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is the financial performance for May 2021. It's on pages 38 to 54 of your agenda. And Prabhat, is this the last meeting? Yes. Well, I've got to say, I've really enjoyed working with you, and you've done a brilliant job for us. So, you sound to Nelson.
Oh,
you never asked your permission.
No, I didn't. I didn't know who was moving. Your worship.
Yeah, good one, Dan. No, sorry, Councillor Davidson.
You thought he was going.
The table's yours.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors and staff. I'd like to the report answer it and happy to answer any questions if you may have for the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go around this way. Councillor Davidson.
No, all good, thank you.
Councillor Cogan.
Sorry, I'm just looking through to see if I did any yellow highlighting. But I'm pretty sure I didn't. No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Councillor Neal.
No, but very sad to see you going.
Yeah.
I realise that, and the fact that it's only any questions of you shows how much we appreciate what you've done. Makes it very smooth.
Yeah.
Best of luck when you go, and just let us know if you want to move back down, because it's much nicer down here.
Francois.
No, is what it is. Not much we can do about it. It's all good.
Councillor Hart.
No, fine, thank you.
Councillor Hart.
I have no questions, but I just want to say that it's good to see a really strong balance sheet, and it's obviously being effectively managed, but it's obviously in conjunction with the numerous grants and funding we've received. So I'd like to thank the staff that have worked in this space, because it's definitely showing in our balance sheet. So it's good.
No, it's really good. Thanks, Ravas. One, it's more of a comment. One thing that caught my eye is that the rates debtors is actually decreased from last year, and I don't know whether that's the usual level it is year on year, or
It's not really too far off, is it?
yeah, no, interesting.
No, it's just
Yeah.
Well, as it's your last meeting, on behalf of the councils, I'd like to really thank you. You've been a pleasure to work with. And the quality of the reports has been outstanding. And as Councillor Neil said, the reason there's no questions is it's all there in front of us. I invited Councillor to move the financial performance report for May 2021 from the Finance Manager of Western District Council be received. Deputy Mayor, Seconder, Councillor Hart, those in favour? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Okay.
I
didn't even know this.
Next item on the pronunciation.
What's his name?
When you say pronunciation?
Oh. I like you trying to say that. Yes. Right, the next item on the agenda is the rates write-offs and the remissions for 2020, 2021. It's on pages 55 to 59 of your agenda. And Lucy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This report is to present the write-offs and remissions that have occurred during the year. Council staff don't have the actual delegation to write these off. Council has to approve them. I'll just mention one large remission that you'll see on here, or write-off, and that's the contiguous, recommended by the Ombudsman. So over the years, we found that there are amendments that have been made through our RID as per council instruction, make sure we get the RID right. And what has happened at the time is the remission and write-off has been for the current year, whereas under section 41, we need to go back 5 years. So this large write-off of 200,000 is correcting those corrections basically for the 4 years after that, before that. Happy to answer any other questions.
Thanks, Lucy.
The unoccupied Maori land item, does that come in that pretty much that level every year, usually? And what's that in relation to?
Yeah, so it's land where we've been unable to collect land, and now, as you know, we're not able to collect rates on the land. And it is around about that level, and it's when it gets over the 6 years, we've just been.
So why is it rated?
Yeah, well, legally we've had to previously, but now with the new Act coming in force on the 1st of July, we won't be rating unoccupied land that can't be used, that isn't in use.
Oh, okay. So that item, that line item is going to disappear in the future, is it?
There potentially will be some.
Right.
But it just depends on how the Act, what we've got in our accounts and how it works,
right,
and where we are at the beginning of the year.
And the one-off adjustment with participation Western.
So that is, if you remember, they were going to increase the batch fee to cover the rates that we'd started rating them. And council determined that they couldn't increase the batch fees, so we agreed to write off those extra rates for them for this current year.
Paul. Thank you. The law change relating to unoccupied mining land is an advancement, I have to say. For years and years and years, this has been something that has tested councils, and every single council that I can remember has looked at the figures and asked the same question as Councillor Carruthers: why are we writing off all this for the Maoris? And basically it's because it's multiple owned land with several hundred owners in a particular block that happens to be isolated in the back and beyond, of absolutely no use except for us because it has a connection to the tribe. But even then, we own about half a flax bush each. You're never going to get anything off it. And so finally, the government has seen sense and is not going to be raising unoccupied mining land. Great to see. Thank you.
So we're likely to have less of this because it will become non-rateable, so there won't be rates to run it up.
Councillor Kennedy.
I suppose just on that point there, it says non-rateable dock, and I've just one question about in terms of these write-offs and the write-offs by agreement, and is that just obviously between the ratepayer and the council? Is it an opinion-based thing, or?
Well, some of this is legal requirements.
Yeah.
So we have to write this off, and some of these are, as you can see, the ombudsman. So the ombudsman's got involved, and we've worked with them to actually make corrections to this. And some of it is with agreement, but mainly that agreement has come from council with these, so the non-contiguous remissions. So that was for putting everything back into the place where it previously was, even though it wasn't right. Mm. So those things are actual council decisions at that time.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you.
Councillor Hart.
No, thanks, Susie. Just on the variance, it's going to be quite a substantial variance, isn't it? But it will, next year we won't have this issue because it's been corrected now. So there shouldn't be such a big variance for next year.
No. Okay.
Councillor Hartwell.
Yeah, just thanks, Paul, for your explanation of that land. It makes a bit more sense now, and yeah, no questions.
Francois.
No, just following on from Paul, it's fine, obviously. So what the good thing about this is that this saves me now every year arguing with staff about paying for it, and the fact that they got 2 shows of getting it. So this is great. Saves me an argument. It's excellent.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Neal.
One question. So if rates are deferred, then if that happens for several years, then after 6 years, can they not be claimed? If we have an agreement, we can actually extend that with them. So legally, technically not. But if there's a legal agreement to do so, then we can do. We can collect. So if rates are deferred, would there normally be a legal agreement? Yes. Yeah, it's called a postponement, and there is a legal agreement there. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Karakia.
No, Leslie, most of it will, yeah, even though it's huge figures with the non-contiguous, I can understand why that was necessary. I just wondered about, can you explain just like with the subdivision one, how does that work? Because obviously there's been a significant decrease. But
yeah, so we have a policy, a remissions policy, where there's a development, and first it's a couple of years, I can't remember how many years, we actually remit some of the rates to assist them to actually develop the land and sell it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's in the remissions policy. Oh, so based on this, it suggests there hasn't been much
activity, which, okay, obvious. That's a very good explanation as to why there hasn't been much activity knowing our current situation. Thank you.
Councillor Davison.
No questions, Lucy. Thank you.
I invite a councillor to move that A, council receive the report, and B, that council approves the total proposed rates write-offs and remission of $454,417, excluding GST, for the financial year ending 30th of June 2021. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Davidson, all those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Leslie. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the Western District Council Urban Boom Maintenance Policy. It's on pages 60 to 64 of your agenda, and Scott Baxendale.
Your worship, councillors. I'd like to take the paper as read. Before we move on to questions, I'd just like to point out that the review date should read as 2024 and not 2021. Otherwise, we would be now. I'm quite happy to take questions.
If you give me a cross.
Thanks, Scott. So the objective of the policy is that adjoining owners are responsible for the burdens, except in certain circumstances. The council will come in and mow them.
Yes.
Yes. So what might those circumstances be?
We are looking at how we were going to categorise that, but you'll be looking at extreme hardship or incapacity behind that. One of the things that we need to be very mindful of is that we don't get what I would describe as creeping incrementalism with this, where increasing numbers of people fit within it. So it would be an extremist. We've looked at some possibilities of how we would categorise that, but we would need to firm that up. Should council agree to adopt this policy. And what we would do is we would make it clear to applicants when they provide what those categories were, so we don't get suddenly inundated with people.
So considered, it seems to me the danger here is that the idea will get around that if you don't mow your birds, is there any merit in the council having the right to charge for that service, and that those charges be collected as part of the rates? So in other words, if council is obliged because of the negligence of a landowner to mow their booms to incur that cost, why should the general ratepayer who diligently mow their boom, why should they be subsidising that?
There would have to be a case put together to do that, and there would be a leading time to do that, and there would be all sorts of implications around administration perspective as well. The view that we took was that we would have a default position where if burns got out of hand, we would pick something up 6 months later, and in extremis for residents who are in hardship that we may look at that more frequently. But the issue for us is very much about trying to avoid either people just leaving the ground to go completely to disuse, or alternatively we end up by accident picking up additional cost. We have explored within the executive team whether there is scope to do a recharge arrangement, but it doesn't actually, it's not as simple as it looks.
Through your worship, the fact that majority of booms are actually on council road reserve doesn't allow us to charge, because it's actually not their profit. So just to reinforce what Scott is saying, any booms that remain, I suppose, unmowed will be mowed periodically at the ratepayers' cost. Not the ratepayers, but the ratepayers total. Yeah.
I think it's a terrific move. This is something that the council should be in. Shouldn't be much debate about it, to be honest. I think it was a mistake back in 2013. It was removed from the council budget because of austerity. I think it's a bit of a specious argument as well about, well, if we do this, then people will think, oh, well, I don't need to mow my lawns anymore, and out the front, and the council will do it for me. I mean, who's going to want a paddock in front of your house, really? And anyway, that argument works in reverse, doesn't it? Because if the council's not doing the booms and the contractor's not doing the booms, then it's going to get the argument, well, I'm not getting anything from the council. Therefore, yeah. So, no, I think it's a grand one.
Councillor Kirby.
Yeah, I suppose it's an interesting one. I just, for me, I'd like a specific mention about where the money's coming from to fund this activity. My preference it doesn't come from the general rate, it comes from as this is specific to Hokitika and Teneri, that it comes from the community rate from there as opposed to the general rate, because otherwise you get, as usual.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Worship. So apologies for lateness. Right. In general, I support the concept of having a policy. I think the frequency is too light, particularly over the summer. I think that's our major issue area, is the summer growth period, and that's where we receive noticeable increases in feedback around the booms, and it should be, I believe we should be doing it more often in the summer. We discussed this before council wound up the Parks, Reserves and Environment Subcommittee, and they settled on between 4 and 6 times a year was kind of their recommendation, being that aligned to kind of the growth of the lawns, I guess, for one of the less scientific methodology. I think part of this is around community pride. Residents that mow the boom in front of their property but leave half a metre on the other side of that boom because it's the neighbours to mow and all that sort of stuff. I think we've got to actually to look at this from a civic pride perspective and think, well, it's actually really important that where possible, able people do support others, and in this instance, the council support those people that physically or financially cannot mow their boom. I don't want to see what happened over the last summer where we had significant growth that was a real issue and received a lot of commentary. So I think it would be good to amend this policy to this draft policy to factor in more mows, particularly over the summer period. And I think keeping a register and stuff internally is an administrative waste of time. I would be more obliged to respond on a as needed basis. I think we are just creating an administrative unnecessary requirement for the council and council staff. And the fact that you have to apply annually, I think is also administrative and a nonsense, because if Mrs. Smith lives in her house 1 year, unless the house is sold, she dies, she's highly likely to live in the house the following year. So I think if you're on the register, you're on the register until you notify you're no longer on the register, rather than having to annually let council know before a set date that you want it done again this year and this year and this year. I just don't think we need that level of administrative workload on the staff.
People are probably going to forget to do it.
And I know, it's just like, why would we make unnecessary work for ourselves?
Councillor Moon. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hart. Oh,
We're new to that. No, thanks, Scott. This one's gone around a bit as well, but I have no questions.
Councillor Hartshall.
Yes, it's a one of the major talking points, isn't it? I agree with what everyone said, but at the end of the day, is this going to be a targeted rate for Hokitika, or is it people in Frang's going to be paying for somebody to mow the lawn in Hokitika? And just on the other side of it, how do you really manage it? Like, you just got same. Is it going to go through our register, or does the contractor just go around and say, "There's a long lawn, I'll mow it"? You know, just those sort of concerns.
I mean, through your worship, in terms of clarification, just to remind councillors, this is policy that was introduced, or the removal of burden cutting was introduced in 2013. So the issue that we've got here is that the contractor who continued doing it free gratis for a period has now decided that they're not going to do it free gratis for a period. So the purpose of this report is to clarify the extenuating circumstances where we would continue to do it. It is not designed for the council to suddenly come along and pick up where it left off 8 years ago. So one of the areas that we discussed internally, particularly around how you would identify who is eligible for this. Firstly, we only want to be doing this in circumstances where people can't do this, not as a general rule. So we would not anticipate huge take up of this. And the other element of it is, if you are not clear about your categories for acceptance, if you don't have a process for this, then what happens is you get lots of complaints coming into the council as to why you've agreed to do one person's but not somebody else. So you need to have a framework within which you can make these work, and keep an eye on exactly how much expenditure you're incurring as a result of that.
Francois.
Yeah, hey, look, this one, honestly, team's more important to me than directors, paying directors on a board. This is core business. We need to be doing this. You know, we're fortunate that the bulk of the community take pride in their lawns and do it. I've seen there's a lot of other places around the country that are shocking. I don't even know why we're having this conversation. We should be just doing it. And I know that sounds a wee bit hypocritical about spending money, but you know, this is our town. We've got to be proud of it. And has there been any thought around incentivizing the people that do mow their lawns and saying, listen, go mow the neighbour's bloody lawns, or can you help somewhere? You know, there's got to be a way to do it cheaply. But I think this is just core business and we need to do
it. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, happy with the policy. My civic pride would come from seeing neighbours help out ones that need it, actually more so than having bedding in my birds. And I'd be quite happy with a paddock out the front as long as I didn't get charged grazing fees from DW. So I don't know why people think that would be a problem. But yeah, not happy with the proposals.
Councillor Karakia.
Okay, so the one thing I'm very conscious of, and this is such a big topic out there in the community, is that I'm very pleased we're bringing it back in again to be monitored. I really like the idea around the point around reporting, that will be revised every 12 months as well, because, and for two reasons with that. One is, you know, for the people that are applying, and I agree with you, Scott, I think it has to be, people have to have a genuine reason for why they have an inability to mow their front lawn, you know, and I'm unfortunately I have to disagree with Councillor Martin. I actually believe that everyone should have to apply annually, because people's circumstances can change. They could move on, they could have been ill and now they're better. You know, so I think that needs to be a process that they go through, and they know they have to go through, to ensure that they are getting something, you know, for nothing in effect, because it is having an impact on other ratepayers. So the only thing that I would agree to in here that I think that needs to happen is, I think we do need to take consideration around frequency, particularly in the summer. You know, is it possible for us to, you know, drop off a little in the winter and just add another, you know, mow or two, if possible, in the summer?
The initial discussions we had with them is 4 times, starting spring, doing it 4 times during the spring to the end of summer. Winter obviously dies away pretty quickly, so 4 times a mow, which basically means every second month during the sprang through something.
And I tell you what, it would make great front page headlines, letting people know that if we were paying any more than the 7% was going back on the rate pay, because that was incredible. The difference in price between, paying, what it costs at 7% against what it would cost if everybody decided they wanted their lawns mowed, then yeah, everyone would be out there almost wanting to mow their lawns.
And through your worship, it picks up on what Councillor Kennedy was saying earlier on in terms of the range between South Westland and here, is you'd also have a scenario where the people who were cutting the front land and subsidising the people who don't, if this kind of policy is not in structured properly.
No.
Councillor Davidson.
Well, I'm not going to mow my front lawn.
You haven't got one.
That's right. I'm not going to mow. No, I certainly I support what Frantel was saying. It's something that we should be doing. Council should be promoting, encouraging residents to mow their berms. I mean, it creates a really good culture. So, but I support sort of saying there. The only issue I have is you're saying before that it was is it council land?
Yes, berms still on council roads.
So, one question: if there's an incident while one of the residents is mowing the lawn, who would be accountable?
You mean a car ran into a person? Right.
No, I'm just saying, like for an example, if
the stone flew up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or the wind.
Yes.
That's just.
No,
that's just a question.
Yeah, I mean, it's not one that could pull around. I mean, what I can say is that a number of councils across New Zealand operate policies similar to this, and a lot of people mow the grass in front of their properties.
Just to clarify, Scott, to appreciate what you've said, we actually looked at a number of policies before we come up. So this is a plagiarisation of a number of policies around New Zealand and picking out obviously what we believe can work here.
Okay. That's
To me, it's all about pride. So, we live in a wonderful, beautiful place, and keeping it tidy, just like we do at home,
absolutely
should be a no-brainer. Would someone like to move that A, council receive the report, B, that council adopts the proposed Western District Council urban maintenance policy? Councillor Davidson and Councillor Cogan, all those in favour? Those against? Yep. Thanks very much, Scott. Move on to the next one, which is the adoption of sale of land policy. It's on pages 65 to 69 of your agenda. And we welcome Fiona Skelly to present.
Good afternoon. So, it's the adoption of the sale of property policy, property being land structures. So the purpose of this report is to consider the adoption of the policy, which we currently don't have. There is a gap from not having this. We need to make sure that we really do inform the sale of council-owned property before we make the decision to sell. So thinking about things whether easements might need to be put in place because it's been council-owned previously and there may be infrastructure there. Whether going through such a process would cancel out the benefits of sale. Thinking through what adjacent and adjoining land is there and whether there's infrastructure projects that may be impacted in the future. So there's quite a few measures considered. I'll take the report as read.
Thanks.
Just for worship, can I just make a comment before we go around the table? So this is in conjunction with the work we're doing around our properties review. So we're progressing, identifying and also scoping up each of these land parcels that we do own or manage. We've incorporated DWL in this process as well to look at their properties, but I think it's to do with ensuring that when we do make a consideration around the future use of some of these properties, we have a policy that backs up the process behind it.
Personally, I'm delighted to see the policy as over the years, council has been in the unfortunate position of selling a property, hasn't been considered for an easement or water pipe going through it, and ends up having to buy its way out of it. Hasn't happened for several years, but it has happened in the past. Pretty unfortunate. Open for discussion, Deputy Mayor Crothers.
I've just been pedantic that it has been needed to take a route as Chief Executive Officer. He's the Chief Executive, so such a person as Chief Executive Officer.
Paul, how's the spelling?
Even the lawyer. I think it's good. I mean, it's just tidying up loose ends.
I suppose just one thing. So if someone came to the council, there was a bit of council land, wanted to purchase it, is that where this would come in? And then we'd get a valuer in? I suppose what I'd like to see, if that were to happen, that the council would put it on the market rather than just selling it around the table, like open it up to tender to maximise the value.
So just to clarify on there, the only exception to it going public is if it is a piece of land already used by an adjoining landowner. So for example, if it's a landlocked piece of maybe road reserve that's in the middle of a farm,
Yeah.
you wouldn't put that on the open
Yeah,
market.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it does make.
Okay, right. Sorry, I'm backdated on that,
Just to
by the
clarify,
way.
it doesn't include unformed legal road, so unformed legal road is another process to close that road.
Thank you.
We know it well.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that sale of property, the really contentious ones that I've been involved in, were where we didn't give effect to mana whenua and the significance of what actually sat on some of that land. So I think recognising that within the policy would be really useful. And thinking of the example in Jackson Bay, where we almost embarked on sale and then it was an archaeological site. So recognising that somewhere in the policy I think would be useful, is ensuring, just as similar to easements and council use, that we're not actually selling off land that may have other value. Agree with Deputy Mayor Crothers about that comment, and noticed that as well. What the policy doesn't clarify for me is the sale process, and I think we should clarify that in here as well, in terms of how we manage the sale, in terms of who does that for us, because that's not clear, and it would be good to clarify that.
It is clarified, because it says the Chief Executive has to agree in terms of the sale, which would include the sale process. So it comes under this policy. I think the Chief Executive's job to do that.
That's how I read it. So if there's a particular avenue that council preferred as a priority versus any other process, I'm happy to take that into consideration when we write the report for that piece of passport land.
I'm just thinking about what we do at the moment. What we do at the moment is we handle it by a subsidiary, don't we? They sell property on our behalf.
I haven't been involved in any property sale since I've been here, but obviously DW has. Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to understand, because that's actually that's the critical part, because that's actually where profits generated from here is the valuer and the sales agent.
So just to be clear, this policy is around informing staff when they're going through the process of deciding whether that's even worth putting forward. How that's done, as Councillor Brothers mentioned, would be at the discretion of the CEO, CE, depending on the piece of land and the relevance at the time and the state of.
So there's various mechanisms to sell property. Obviously, one, the example you're using is quite a bit of abandoned land, which quite a rigorous process have to be followed, and a lot of parcels at the same time. Whether we use that same mechanism next time.
I don't think you could be prescriptive in this policy, because you'd end up overlooking something.
That's more an as process.
Just be very clear that the strategically, the intent of this is to maximise profit for council. If a parcel of land is identified for sale, it's to maximise profit for council and the ratepayers. It's not to provide benefit to sales agents. We should be maximising, strategically, we should be maximising the return to the ratepayer.
I disagree that that's the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to ensure that when we're disposing of land, we've considered all avenues.
Oh, sorry, talking about when a land piece is approved for sale. So it's gone through this it's gone through this. We're kind of going into actually probably down a rabbit's warren a bit here. The intent is if a property is deemed surplus, that it's disposed of in the most cost-efficient way to return and maximise profit to council. And I think that needs to be recognised.
I think more importantly, the purpose of the process is to ensure that the matters set out in the report, like an easement for water, an easement for power, all of those things are actually taken by staff via the policy to be considered. I think that's why we're doing it.
Yeah, no, all those elements I agree with. That all makes sense.
Councillor Hart.
No, thanks, Fiona. No question.
Councillor Hartwell.
No questions.
Francois.
No, good.
Councillor Neal. Councillor Coe.
No, I think it's great that we're actually recognising these extra policies that have been missing in the past, and we're working through the process because, and I guess once a policy, I'm assuming, comes into place, then it goes under a review every, was it 3 years or?
It depends on the type of processes. So I think it's. Can't recall exactly this one rotation, but it'll be part of a review process.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Councillor Davis.
Does this also include land swap?
Well, it would include, we'd still go through the same assessments and whether the land is able to be swapped.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I invite councillor to move A, that council receive the report, and B, that council resolve to adopt the sale and policy attached as Appendix 1. Councillor? Of course, with the amendment to Chief Executive, as opposed to Chief Executive Officer.
Yeah.
Councillor Cogan, thank you. And I'm seeing that. Councillor Neal, thank you very much. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thanks, Fiona. You're there for the next one as well. The next agenda item is the alignment of the Franz Joseph strategy, car parking requirements and signage requirements with the Chitai to Potini plan stop report process on pages 70 to 72. Fiona, which can be here.
So the background to this is the Te Toiu Potini plan originally was looking like it would be 5 to even 7 years away from being operative when we first were talking about the issues that we had with the Franz Joseph strategy and with car parking requirements and signage. So those 3 items were resolved by council to pull out separately and to look at private plan, or sorry, not an individual private plan change to our existing district plan. Since that time, the decision has been made to fast track the Te Toiu Potini plan, and that has meant that we would be looking at a 2-year time frame as opposed to 5. Basically, the request or the consideration is to bring those 3 matters into alignment with the current plan review process. Basically, they will run at about the same time frame, that potentially will progress even quicker. The concern with running the Franz Joseph strategy, consultation, etc., separately to the plan change, to the combined plan, is that we would end up with a double up of consultation with the community. We would potentially not be sending the exact same messages because we've got 2 different teams doing it. And there would be additional cost around
not just with the consultation process, but with undertaking a plan change to our district plan now. Our delegations have been handed over to the regional council to draft district plans. So we would have to pay them, with us being the applicant to a private plan change. So the game's changed a lot since the first resolution came about. And so the request now is to consider aligning those three matters into the current plan process so that it can be tied up with, number one, ensuring that there's collaboration between all three districts around how we're managing these items. But secondly, because I believe that it'll be more time and resource efficient to do it that way.
Thanks, Fiona. Councillor Hartshorn, Southern Councillor.
Yeah, no, I support the recommendation.
Councillor Kennedy.
I'm actually not very impressed about it. So just firstly, in terms of the financial considerations, we're asking people to pay twice for the same thing. Is that right? Because I mean, in terms of Franz Joseph, they've already been rated and paid for this, you know, multiple times, and then you're saying, oh, we'll just give it to the one district plan, and they can rate, the West Coast Regional Council can rate for it.
Sorry, just to clarify, the work that has been undertaken and will continue to be undertaken will sit within what we've already planned for. But at the end of the strategy, at the end of the consultation of the strategy, which is what we're working towards, when it comes to actually putting rules into a plan, the main cost would be in getting them into our current plan versus into the future plan. Our current plan would cost us, it would be $10,000 just for one part of the plan change to change the rules immediately, and then we would have to pay their staff costs for processing it. We will continue to run the process with the TTPP committee on site, and the result will be putting those rules into the new plan, not trying to do it in the old plan. That's the part of the resolution that I'm looking at trying to.
And so we've spoken to the one district plan committee about this. We'll take it on.
So the staff and project manager, yes, but it hasn't gone to the committee yet because it had to be resolved here first.
So offer it to them, and they may say no, we don't want it because, or we do want it because we've got nothing else to do.
We won't be saying that.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean.
They have to do it anyway if we don't do it.
They have to do it? Should we just fold the planning committee and get the one district planning committee to do everything else? Look, like you talk about, look, it's always in the near future. For a decade, this Franz Joseph strategy and all the rest of it's always been in the near future. We need to know, because what's coming in the near future is a flood that's going to take out the wastewater treatment plant again. That's coming in the near future, and we don't know where we're going to put it. Earthquakes coming in the near future, have to rebuild a town, or we don't know where we're going to put it. We say, look, it's going to happen, you know, it's going to happen before this one district plan has to happen, and it will happen. It seems like all of a sudden it's going to be rushed at the end. I don't think there's any reason to include like this Franz Joseph strategy as an afterthought. It's been that long, let's get it out there and hook into it. And then rather than the district plan, you know, these people from Westport, Greymouth, wherever it is, telling the people of Franz and voting on the strategy there, we should keep it in here. I think it's our job to do it.
So just to be clear, my intention would be to keep it in here with me being the lead officer on it, but it would be aligned with what's happening with the plan review, and the resolution is about where the rules end up. So to begin with, the resolution was that the plan change considerations for car parking, signage and brand strategy were to be a plan change to the current plan, and that's where the rules would end up. But now we're saying the other plan is going to be prepared and it's going to be done and it's already going to be paid for. So instead of paying regional council to change our plan, let's put it in the new plan, because it's actually going to be prepared a lot quicker than we thought it was going to.
Well, why don't we get out there with the consultation document now and all the rest of it, because it is ready, so the people with Friends know which way it's heading, and then do your administrative bit after that. I don't like. It's been too long. I want action. I'm sick of it.
It wasn't this holding it up, I can assure you of that.
Yeah, well, something was, but you know, this consultation that's in the near future, and rather than people with Friends looking at specifically the Friends Justice strategy, we'll look at it among all of this massive district plan, which I don't think anyone's going to read front to back when it goes out to consultation.
Councillor Martin.
Sorry, mate. I'm still taking it all in. Sorry, Your Worship. I think you've got some really valid points, Fiona, and I think also Councillor Kennedy does as well. And I have seen this Friends thing go round and round and round. I appreciate that this is really just dealing with where the plan change aspects of it. So, you know, and sitting on the one district plan or Te Tau Putini plan process with Francois, Paul, Bruce and myself, we and fast tracking that plan means that hopefully it's going to become operative a lot sooner than we all intended to. So that milestone shifting forward, or shifting closer to today, means that we don't have to apply for a variation or a district plan change to our current operative plan. We can roll it into that plan. Shouldn't take the focus off the staff needing to do the work, undertake the consultation with the community, agree on a strategy, and do that body of work. I can't see why this decision should affect the timeline on that. That should happen. That should be proceeding now before Christmas. That was the kind of the timeline we were working to last year. It was like Christmas last year. We've had COVID. That changed things a little bit in terms of timelines. It's meant now we're here. I think we should go forward with this recommendation, but internally, let's really make some deadlines or consultation with the Friends community and tick that box before Christmas in terms of getting a very clear, considered strategy that then folds into the one district plan, because without that, we're going to leave everyone, you know, it's going to be left off the journey. So I support the recommendations here to summarise, but it doesn't take our focus off the need to do the mahi internally to get that strategy written and adopted.
Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Fiona. I have no questions.
Just Your Worship, can I make one comment? So just to recall, I made to councillors earlier this year regarding the delay in the master plan. Primarily, this was to do with the discussions in Wellington with regards to the Waiho River shovel-ready project, the 24 million that had been put aside. That opened up a can of worms in terms of what is the long-term future of the stock tanks and whether the south side process or future should not be fast-tracked. So that's where the discussion happened. The ministers received a paper around December, and the outcome of that paper, we still don't have a resolution on the south side, and that's still months away from being resolved. We have got a resolution on the north side for the Waiho River, and that's hopefully proceeding in the near future. That's primarily why the consultation piece stalled, because we had to get some very clear outcomes from that. Francois.
You know, listen, I understand and understand totally where Ryan's coming from on this, and you know his frustration's clear. However, I know where Fiona's coming from too, so I have to support the recommendation.
Yeah, support the recommendation. It makes a lot of sense, but I don't think that's taking anything away from your comments, Ryan. I think this is probably the best way to progress what you want anyway.
Councillor Coe.
I don't. Why duplicate? Really,
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, support it, but I understand where you're coming from, Ryan, and I think you sort of give the heads up when Councillor Martin spoke about what he said about it.
Spanish. I just got to get it all in.
I'll advise the councillor to remove A, council received the report, and B, that council resolved to incorporate the matters of the Franz Joseph strategy, signage and car parking into the Titai to Hotini planning process.
I'm happy to move those, and I'd like the addition of a third recommendation, Your Worship, that the Franz Joseph strategy, signage and car parking matters be reported regularly to the Planning Committee of Western District Council.
Your Worship, I think that's a standing item anyway, so we could add that as a.
Do we need them to edit, or do we? It's on the action.
I think it might be good to add it, then we're very clear that we've captured it.
We'd like to, Di, you tell us. Signage and car parking minutes report regularly to the planning committee. How do you do that? So we have a C as well. Would someone like to move in the direction?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'll reluctantly.
Councillor Kennedy, do I have a second? All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Everyone's
But still.
Go the Shield, man.
Go the Shield.
The next item on the agenda is Riddle Street trial stage 2 update, verbal report. Thanks, Fiona.
Hold up, the plan. Okay. So we spoke in an update at the Planning and Regs Committee meeting recently around the feedback to date from Rebel Street. Largely that feedback involved moving street furniture from the western side of Rebel Street to the eastern side. This is a plan depicting what this last part of the trial will end up looking like. So we have the orange bits going down the road, crossing points. There was a really valid point made by Councillor Hartshorn around having room to get between vehicles to get from the one side of the road to the other. Tables will set up. So we looking at putting that in, there'll be speed pacifiers, one where Weld Lane will cross over to in front of Tate Night, and there will be one at the last crossing point down towards Eastlands. The blue area is going to be a loading bay. So speaking with courier drivers, etc., their preference was to have something part way down the block, so that they're reasonably in the middle to be going either way. The green platform is where Stella already exists. So what we'd be looking at doing is just adding the street furniture to that side of the road. Stella gives a really good example of what the decking could look like going forward. What we're going to be doing in the background is working on a couple of concept designs that could show what long-term decking along that side of the road could look like. And we're getting the angle parking over on the west side of the road. Are there any questions or anything obvious? Obviously, we've, I don't know how many of you have been down there in the last couple of days, but the majority of bollards and stalks of the bollards have been removed, so we've left the bases in certain places to delineate where cornering should happen. But yeah, the majority of the bollards are gone. The picnic tables have been taken from in front of Edison's, and I can't remember which other shop, and moved around to Weld Lane. So yeah, based on the submission feedback and the councillors' feedback, that's what we've got to so far.
Councillor Davidson.
No no comment at this stage, Your Worship.
Councillor Karakia.
It'll be interesting to see with that change over to this side of the road, how effective that's going to be. Where's the planter boxes?
So they're not shown there as yet. They will be placed once the picnic tables are placed to see exactly where they should be sitting.
Right, so they'll be over on this side as well.
There may be, there will need to be some used around that loading bay, just to differentiate between where the seating area is and where the loading bay will pull in and out from.
So the picnic tables that are getting moved over to this side are just going to sit on the footpath?
On the road.
Sit on the road with no platform, because it's, like visually it's very difficult to be able to see the bigger picture of what it has. There been a concept design actually drawn up around, if we were to go with this, what the longer term concept plan would look like? Because, and why I ask that is because a lot of people are visionary people like myself. So while we're going through this process, it would have been really handy to have had a concept plan that people could visually look at the starting points at either end of that street to know, okay, so that we're transitioning down this way now, and this is ultimately, if everybody agrees on it, what it will look like.
And that is exactly what we're working on. Unfortunately, doing that throughout the process, we were changing the whole time, and until the recent workshop, we didn't have a really structured idea of exactly what was wanted. So after trying a few things that we've got feedback on, we're hearing a much louder voice around what's actually wanted now, and we can get to the point of putting those concepts in.
Because I think once people can understand, because even with the tables being moved over and still sitting on the road, it's still aesthetically, it's still not giving you
a really good example. If you can imagine that down the whole side of the road, that's what we're
I can imagine that, but for any general person that's walking down there at the moment, they wouldn't be able to. So that's why I would, I think that would be a really good plan if we want to get some more positive traction around this. The other is, and I still have to question why we've done this in the winter. Like if we were going to trial.
This council resolved to.
God, I just wish we had, it had been considered and done closer to the summer months when you get to see the bigger benefit of what it is we're trying to achieve down there. So you talk about this being the final stage. So that's a final stage that would last for how long?
This is based on the fact that council resolved for it to be a 6-month trial. So we're getting to the end of that 6 months.
Yeah, well, see, I think we're defeating the end of purpose of it. If we're getting to the end of it now and it's still winter, I don't think, people are going to see the true benefit of what it could effectively be like, particularly in the summer months, which would be when I think it would showcase at its best.
If council resolved to ask for our staff to put forward an extension or to change the time frame, that can happen. But it is council resolution, so that's what our staff is working on.
Unfortunately, I missed that original meeting, but I wouldn't have agreed to it for the winter.
Councillor Neal.
My only question is around wheelchair accessibility. So are all the crossings going to be suitable? Wheelchairs and buggies?
In the short term, we will have to look at putting in some basic ramp type additions. In the long term, if we were to go, either way, there's money in the long term plan to be looking at doing up footpaths. So in the long term, we would definitely be looking at putting in better accessibility on that block. In the short term, it would have to be a temporary
but they'll still be safe and usable.
Francois.
Yeah, hey, Fiona, I reckon it looks great. I think it's going to be an improvement, definitely an improvement. I understand I can understand why we're doing it. It makes perfect sense. I don't see any issue why we can't resolve to extend it to some of the summer months to actually get a really good feel for it. So I too can envision how great this could be and appreciate all the work you are doing. But I think the winter's the issue. It isn't going to have its full potential. So we really do need to look at extending it. And even in the interim, I look, there's really good, because I can see what you mean by Stellas with that decking down. That would look amazing. Obviously, through the trial period, it's probably not cost effective, obviously. However, there's some really good quality artificial grass out there now that could even improve the look. Running it up Stella and then on the other side of it, just something to make it look a wee bit more inviting. But absolutely appreciating what you're doing, and I think we are heading in the right direction.
Councillor Hartram.
Yeah, no, that's looking a lot better. I just maybe question the position of the couriers. I'm not familiar exactly with who's in what buildings, but I'm just imagine sitting down there and having a nice feed, and a dirty old diesel courier starts up and pumps the stuff into the meal. I just wondered if it would have been better, the courier spots would have been better at the end where the last three tables are.
Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Fiona. I think that looks much better, and it'll be interesting to see how that part of the trial goes.
Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Fiona. It's good to see a plan. I could say a lot about this. I think there's some steps in the right direction on this plan. I think there's some things that should be taken into consideration as well. Namely, some businesses on the beach side of Revel Street do and are requesting outdoor seating in front of their shops. That's very well known to council. From two particular food businesses on that side of the street that are saying, please, can we have picnic tables? I don't think we should discount that. I think we should factor that in. I struggle with the why. When I look at that, I don't think we've understood or unpacked the why. It's going to look like a car yard. If the purpose is to beautify and attract people in, I don't believe that trial plan as proposed does that. I think it will stack cars in as the primary feature of the road, and it will actually block the view of the buildings because of the slope and camber of the street. I heard the feedback and acknowledged the feedback to put the car parking on the seaside of Revel Street. That was a loud message initially. I do think it would be worth, before any changes like this are made, to actually do some really simple things. And those simple things are consistently relayed to council. Get rid of all those yellow bollards. Sell them, burn them, get rid of them. They really were a capital expense that shouldn't have been attributed to this project. And it's completely made the public look on this whole project as a nonsense, saying it's cost $48,000 when the majority of that is buying those yellow bollards. We need to realise those somehow, and if that is a true asset to council, it should be realised as a capital cost, not an operational cost against this project. If they are in fact needed, if they're not needed, they should be disposed of. So I believe we could do that dining area quite cheaply and to a standard similar to Stella's. For $48,000, we probably could have pulled off a Stella-like deck structure for the whole street, actually. It shouldn't need to cost that much money, and it's like Stella's. There's still a trial deck, actually. I would consider that a trial because it's a wooden platform sitting on a sealed road. It's not like outside the old Millies where there's actually a curb extension paved, bollards not yellow bollards, beautified area. So I struggle with the fact that we're going to kind of make it look cluttered. I think we're going to try and do it cheaply, council cheap, which is not cheap at all, but it ends up looking cheap. And I think we could do those decking areas to a standard that people actually go, yep, we can actually accept them. And I think that's the standard of Stella's, where it's a wooden structure sitting on the road, not a picnic table sitting in the gutter. So when you look at that, the feedback as I've heard it is when you cut through to some of those specific businesses outside of the Weld Lane for picnic tables and a seating area outside that funny car park that's not a car park by the entrance to it, outside on the way into Weld Lane, a seating area, outside the sandwich bar, a seating area, and then on the Stella side of the street, extending that deck structure rather than trying to do something temporary with bollards. I think with those few tweaks, you would be able to achieve a whole lot. I would even probably consider not repainting the parks at this stage, save that money, and just trial those few changes. If we truly make it a dynamic and responsive trial, we should just try small incremental changes, I think. If we spend $5,500 or whatever it was repainting all the car parks, and then we go, actually, that was a mistake, I think it'd be good just to evaluate what some of those low-hanging fruit changes would do to that space and do them really fast and then observe and then gain the feedback. And so those things would be the decking type structures outside where you've got the kind of yellow areas, picnic tables that then sit level and look good, and some on the seaside of the street too, and then keep the parallel parking for now on the seaside and some of the angle parkings on the side before we spend that money.
Just through your worship, can I please just clarify here? So this plan is the direct result of the directive given by council at the workshop recently, which specifically stated all eating areas to be taken off the seaside of the road, angle parking to be reduced and as much parking to be retained as possible, and all picnic tables to be pushed over to the side. So there's a lot of what I'm hearing now is conflicting. So we literally took those picnic tables away from that side of the road on the basis that we were directed to.
Yeah, no, sorry, this is not specifically targeted at you. And the staff direction at that time was, I think, very clear, and you've relayed it really well. We're a month down the track now, and the contractors have been there yesterday doing that work. So we've kind of lost a month because we've had to develop this plan, and I'm just suggesting to implement something like this, we're going to lose another month, potentially. It would be really easy to make some of those small changes now and kind of be working towards a strategy or a plan.
Been happening over the last few days. They are happening. But yeah, I am hearing you, and we can have more discussion.
I think we are not aligned. We're not kind of stitched up as we should be. The staff and the councillors and the public we need to be a bit more cohesive on this, because we're hung out to dry actually. We look like we're running that trial as councillors, like we're down there directing where things go and stuff, which is so far from the truth.
Just so your worship, this is why I asked Fiona to give a verbal update today to brief you on the outcomes of the work prior to going any further. So if there's a consensus around the table in terms of the changes that Councillor Crichton is suggesting, I'm happy to reconsider this design.
Well, during the table, then we'll come back to it. Councillor Kearney.
Two questions, Fiona. How much and how long?
So, like I said, I haven't broken out what the capital costs are. That's getting done for me. How long is in terms of, so how long to complete this?
Yeah.
We've been told a week and a half.
Week and a half. And no indication about how much it's going to cost.
I would have to double check that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was my question too, Your Worship. I imagine that this is not going to be done for $2,000, which is what's left in the budget. Well, we have spent 48 on the 50,000 that was allocated. I don't think that we should just be dipping into the town centre fund to continue experimenting. But that is a big improvement though to what was there before. Whether or not it's going to make a lot of difference in the end, I don't know, because I must move in different circles to everyone else, because the feedback that I'm hearing is they hate it. I'm hearing, random ones that like it, but I'm hearing a lot of people that hate it. And the experiment is just about over anyway. I mean, that was the 6 months. It was initially going to be, 3? We extended it to 6 months. But here we are at the end of that period and already looking to spend more money to have another crack at it. I think, and the comments from Councillor Martin with respect to me are kind of angling towards eventually pedestrianisation of the whole block. And I think that would be a slippery slope.
I understand the yellow bollards are reusable. Is that intention? So realistically, will they be reused?
I believe so. I do believe so. What I need to do is go and get the team in November to break down the cost between what's capital and what's operational, because a lot of those items are reusable in other projects that we spoke around.
So they're owned by us, not Australia. Yes. What's the cost of the bollards? Do you know?
I don't know.
No.
Thank you. It'd be really good to get a breakdown of the costs for a start. And I really think it's worthwhile workshopping again on it. I think, a project like this, I reckon it deserves, more workshop on it. That's my view.
Councillor Hatchell.
Just in hindsight, it's easy to look back, but this to me would have been the first initial trial of some plan like this, not like what we've done in the first, and now we should be discussing going further forward on a much nicer thing. But just for the future, this is the minimum plan we should have for a trial, in my mind.
To progress it forward, I support certainly what Councillor Martin is saying in relation to extending the Stella type concept, because I think this is a vast improvement on what we've seen to date. It is a trial, and I have no objection to extending the trial to 31st of March. It's not. It's got to be given the chance to work or not work, and it's certainly not working at the present time. There are differing views, but that's kind of where I come from. I'll flip it back to you, Councillor Martin. You've asked it.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure about the comment about pedestrianisation of the whole street. I think we'd have about 9 lynchings in Hokitika if that happened. But when we look at this plan, so I was counting, it's not you and Francois, Paul, your side. I think in reality, those Stella type decks are not that expensive, you know, compared to what we've wasted on yellow bollards. And if we hadn't have spent that money on these yellow bollards, we could have realised that money on more permanent, semi-permanent structures. Can we just, like, when you think about this practically, people are coming round the corner, they hit a stop sign, right? It's still a stop sign. If before they leave the end of Weld, there's a compulsory stop. So then you're angry, so you've come to a stop as a driver, and then you're coming round, and now is that orange thing a pedestrian crossing, or is it a
crossing point? So it's not like a zebra crossing. It's not but it's the point to usher people through. It's also got a speed pacifier there.
So talk me through the speed pacifier. Is that a raised platform?
It's a bump.
Is it one of those ones that we're stuck on the roads that are black and yellow and are drilled into the road that are just a speed hump? Well, I think sometimes the devil's in the detail in terms of functionality of the space and how it actually looks. And then you come around, obviously you're trying to park, found a park hopefully. That's great, you can walk. Those curbs don't have plastic ramps then down off them for these other pedestrian crossings?
We're still looking into whether it's plastic or whether they're wooden built ramps. Yeah, there'll be something there.
And are they delineated across the road with paint, or are they, and is that orange paint? No, I mean, I don't know. All these sorts of details are actually really critical because it's actually how the function and form of that space, how people engage with it and how it looks really. And if you're a driver, you engage with it different if you're a pedestrian or if you're a mum pushing a pram or someone in a wheelchair. And then how it looks. I think most of the feedback at the moment is how it looks. And if we can get that right, and we need to probably unpack that a bit more because there's so much depth in the functionality of that, and workshopping it, I agree with Councillor Davidson, is really necessary. But that shouldn't stop us making those very immediate, low-hanging fruit, as I see them, changes, which were kind of outlined at that last meeting, where we said, can we get rid of the yellow bollards? Can we bring all the seating into that Stella area? I keep calling it the Stella area, but that stretch from Take Note through to the Chinese restaurant, East End, that area, and can we make it like a decking structure? That work, I think, could proceed before we even workshop the next stage and look at that. And that workshop actually needs a bit more than our brains around the table, I think.
Right, so just to move this forward, we have a report. There's a consensus around the table of the need for a workshop. There appears to be a consensus that work on the Stella area needs to be accelerated, moved along. Anyone uncomfortable with my summary? And if not, let's move on.
So cost breakdown.
And the cost breakdown, yeah.
Well, I would also like to get a resolution that we could extend the time frame of this to bring in some of the summer months, because I think you'll find until the summer months happen, you're not going to get absolute potential and absolute buy-in from the public anyhow.
So do you wish to move in that direction? Do you have a second? And to what time?
I think we need to be capturing a good part of the summer months. I mean, we've got wildfire. I would actually suggest end of March next year. So then you can take into account our busiest summer tourism months of November, December, January, February. And then we're getting the flow off, you know. Yeah.
Could looking at that extension be part of the workshop when it's all discussed there? I also feel it's like doing that long way, just a fair bit of summer at the end of March.
I just don't think the whole thing's going to work unless we can get some summer months into it. That's my feeling.
Okay, the report's here, and the report, obviously we're going to receive it. Are there any actions that we can convey to the planning manager at this point. Nice and straightforward.
Can we leave the plan up just for a minute longer? We need these to be laser pointers in the future. People that give us gifts so we can. So, bearing in mind costs, can we pause until the workshop on the repainting of the lines, the introduction of this traffic calming mechanisms and pedestrian crossings? But can we
take that as one action?
Yeah.
Mr. Wish, I'm not sure if we can pause with painting the lines, because then you'll have chaos in terms of where the people park.
No, I'm just saying it's not doesn't change.
Parallel parking.
Oh, I see. It's already there.
But can we bring forward and do with urgency the seating areas, the elevated platforms?
Any disagreement with that? Excellent. And a workshop within a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. So what are you thinking?
That we can all be engaged in, because I'm not sure how. Was it only on the planning that you guys were making the initial? Yeah.
So everyone gets invited.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's right. And finally, and at that point, we could also consider extending the trial if in fact that's what the workshop decides. With it, Gina, or do you want to?
So I'm inclined to have wanted to actually move on the extension.
Okay, do you have a second? Is there a second to that? There is a resolution. There is okay, we have a mover that the trial be extended to the 31st of March. We have a seconder. It's on the table. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Are you in favour?
Well, I can.
All those in favour, so I can count the numbers. All those in favour, please raise your hands. So we have one. Ian, who was the second?
Ian.
Oh, he was the second. Okay. Resolution's lost, and we consider at the workshop. I invited councillor to move that the Rebel Street Trial Stage 2 verbal update from the planning manager, Western District Council, be received. So we can move on. So move. Thank you. And Councillor Martin and those in favour?
Your Worship, can we just get Di please to read out the actions from that for staff, so we're all really crystal clear on what's going to happen.
With the urgency, the seating areas to be brought forward and concept to be workshop for councillors.
In the eastern side, status quo, western side, sorry. It's a good, and if you know what you presented is actually quite easy to follow, and well done.
Sorry, Your Worship, was that include the breakdown?
Costings?
Yeah, breakdown costings today, please.
The next agenda item is a really simple one. It's remits to local government New Zealand, pages 73 to 151. And there's also, in the resolution, there's the move to endorse Councillor Martin to vote at the Local Government New Zealand Annual General Meeting 2021 on behalf of Council. So we have to resolve that if we wish to vote. Simon, it's yours.
Yes, good afternoon again, Your Worship and councillors. I'll take the report as read. I suppose I would like to just put a request that if there's any of these remits that any council says doesn't want to support, to acknowledge that as part of this process.
So the question at the present time, having read the remits as we go around, councillors, is there anyone that doesn't want to support a particular remit? Deputy Mayor Brothers.
No, they're not grouping the reading, like so. Those who's going to conference, 4 days, 2 hours reading stuff.
I'll bring my torch.
So Councillor, we're sacrificing ourselves on your behalf.
Sorry. No, four.
I'm not so sure that I agree with the tree protection one. Walker Council. I am through the entire posting plan for the protection of heritage trees, but this goes way beyond that. My reading of it, I just fell asleep reading it. It just seems to me like the thin end of the wedge, and it seems a lot like SNAs to me, because it says in here somewhere in that very long-winded report that it's 60% of the forests, of the bush areas they're talking about is on private land. Isn't that SNAs all over again? I don't see why. I think hypocritical to support it myself.
Any of the others that you wish to?
No, I fell asleep after that one.
Councillor Kennedy. Couldn't handle it. Councillor Martin.
Oh, nothing there.
Councillor Martin.
No, nothing there.
Francois?
I never read it, I'll be straight up. I was like, I have better things to do. However, I was informed by a planner that along the same lines as Paul around. So yeah, I don't want to support it. But it's just crazy stuff. It really is.
Councillor Hartman.
Yeah, no, tree thing's probably a bit of an issue in some areas, but no, I'll support it.
Councillor Neal.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they're going to make the civics education really exciting for the kids. But if they can, that's good. You hear what you're saying about the trees, and I think it's much more relevant to the big cities than to here. But I support the one.
Councillor Cogan.
This is just one of those ones where I just want to say I'm going to support it and move on.
Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, I support it. Yeah.
Okay, well, how would you feel if we have a resolution that asks our representative to vote against the tree policy and for each of the other policies? Does that sound, is that the feeling of the meeting?
I thought most people supported all of them.
Yes, you did.
We can abstain from remit one. I mean, it's just a nothing thing.
We're all grown-ups.
Yeah.
You know, I think we
Yes or
support
no?
or we don't.
Yeah. We don't support it?
Yeah, well, it's up to the feeling I got around the table was that there wasn't support for the tree policy, but there was support for all the others. So were we out for?
Or would you like to put it?
Right. I'd invite a councillor to A, receive the report, B, support the endorsement of remits being submitted to the local government New Zealand annual general meeting, with the exception of the Auckland tree policy. And C, that council endorse Councillor Martin to vote at the local government New Zealand annual general meeting 2021 on behalf of council. To have a movement, councillors. Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Davidson, those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is an administrative resolution. It's item number 9 on your agenda, and it's the warrants of appointment for a number of staff members, Hamish Webster and Kate Beard. Someone, is there any discussion first of all? We'll jump the gun. I'd like to move that the council confirm its seal being affixed to the following documents as listed on the agenda. Councillor Martin, Councillor Hart, those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Brings us to the end of the public council meeting. So to those that are watching, thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Have we? Paul? I certainly have. I'd like to move that council move into the public excluded section. So, Deputy Mayor Carruthers, those in favour?
Aye.
And